Hi, I'm Kristen Connolly. I'm the elected clerk recorder and registrar of voters here in Contra Costa County. Over the next 2 months, high school students will be interviewing elected officials of their choice to learn more about their work. We hope you will enjoy this series we're calling Democracy Dialogues.
Hi everyone, I'm Arjun Krishnan. I'm a junior that goes to Camp Lindo High School, and today I have Kevin Wilk with me. Kevin Wilk is a council member in Walnut Creek, California. He was first elected in 2016 and served as mayor in 2021. He grew up in LA and attended both UC Berkeley and UCLA. So thank you for being with us today.
Good to see you.
Yeah, okay, cool. So just to start, could you tell me a little bit about your job?
Sure. So on City Council, of course, we're responsible for running the city and providing the oversight, and think of it like the board of directors. So whether it's providing policy for the maintenance of the city, the budget, the roads, everything you think of how a city operates. And the CEO of this mini company or of the city is the city manager. So the city manager reports to the city council, and we help to provide policy over budgeting and really anything else that is in the nature of running a city.
Gotcha, cool. And how would your role as mayor differ from being a council member?
So there's 3 primary ways the mayor differs. One is that you help to set the agenda for city council meetings with the city manager. And there's a lot that goes into that. Not just talking about the agenda items, but also things like how we're going to be running the meeting itself. The second one is that the media comes to us. And when we are mayor, when there's issues that are happening within the city or perhaps region that might involve, in Walnut Creek in this instance, typically the mayor is the one that provides the quote or has the opportunity to do that first. And then the third is really running any of the kind of meetings that happen, whether it's committee meetings or the city council meeting. It's the mayor that starts the meeting, tells people when their time is up to speak, and really helps to direct the different actions that are happening in the meeting, which could be a city council meeting, but could also be committee meetings. And then of course we represent the city when it comes to regional meetings as well, like the mayor's conference or the League of Cities, and it's the mayor that typically is the one that's sitting at the dais for those.
Got it, cool. So when you took office, what was the thing that surprised you the most?
Probably what surprised me initially is that there's so much more that goes into being a city council member than just being a city council member for the city of Walnut Creek. We're expected to weigh in on regional issues, which could be anything from regional issues on housing in general, to what's happening within the county, to things that are at conferences. So I'll be involved in Sacramento, or I'm in committee meetings for the Environmental Quality Policy Committee for the state. So as much time as you want to be able to give to being a city council member or to the actions that would allow us to be involved in the region, you get back from as well. So I had no idea that there would be so much more than just the city issues. For example, when one of our partner cities, Kita, Japan, which we have this relationship, we have exchange students that come here as well as go there. I was able to help host them and chaperone when they were here. And then when I visited Kita, Japan a couple of years later, it was truly the red carpet treatment and coming out to see them. So those kind of opportunities are so much greater than what I thought initially just being a city council member for Walnut Creek would entail. And that's really what I love, is being able to help being an ambassador for Walnut Creek, even outside of Walnut Creek.
Got it, yeah. And on that note, how do you maintain county responsibilities while also prioritizing your district?
So being involved with the county is critical, and our county board of supervisors we're working with constantly to make sure that what we're doing also relates to what the county is doing too. So for example, when I was mayor, we led the charge to help banning flavored vapes in our schools. And so that's of course the school district, but we wanted to be able to do that by taking action within any places that might end up selling vapes or tobacco products. And so we were able to help to ban that within the city, and working with the county helped to give leverage so the county could also take that on. Or if something that the county helps to push forward, we're able then to help take that on for the city. For example, the pandemic was huge, where the county health director was the one that was dictating how we were going to handle things within the city and the counties. And so we as a city had to be able to respond to that. So there's a very tight relationship between how the county operates and how the city operates. It's not just that the county handles areas that are in the unincorporated, which comes for development, which they definitely handle, but how we can work as part of 19 cities within the county, how we as Walnut Creek can do our part. And so this relationship is very strong. Walnut Creek, I believe, is fortunate to have 2 county board of supervisors that are responsible for Walnut Creek in different areas of Walnut Creek. So there's really 2 out of the 5 county board of supervisors we have very, very strong relationships with. That's 2 out of the 3 votes that you need.
Gotcha, yeah, cool. So what would you say is the biggest concern of our county?
Well, certainly housing is an area that is of concern throughout the entire state, and the county is part and parcel of that. All of the cities in the county, as well as the county, have what's called RHNA numbers. These are mandated housing numbers that we must meet in the next 8 years. That is probably the biggest issue that's endemic right now, because we all need to make sure that we have enough housing for you when you need it, and for really everybody. And that's a critical area that the whole state is looking at. And there are state mandates that come with that. So we do have to meet these numbers. So when we're looking at the next 8 years, that's critical. But certainly wildfire prevention and climate action, water usage, these are all very important areas within the county as well, and of course within the state. And so we, again, all have to work together. Think of it like a whole ecosystem. There's the state, the county, and the cities. We really have to be able to forge this important relationship forward so that we can work together. We alone in Walnut Creek can't fix climate change. We can be part of our cities and our county and our state to do our part. And that's really what's important. When it comes to water preservation and conservation, that's part of it as well. So we really have to step up to the plate and be that part of the equation. And I'm proud that Walnut Creek has done this. We've done so many things that I've been proud of in the 7 years that I've been on City Council, and we'll continue to do that.
Awesome, yeah, cool. And just to close things off, what would you say is your favorite part about Contra Costa County?
The diversity of people and the diversity of things to do. Living in Contra Costa, we have the ability to do these incredible hikes. Walnut Creek, for example, has the open space where you can hike or bike up to Mount Diablo. We've got urban areas that are incredible, like in Concord or downtown Walnut Creek. We've got great suburban areas where it's terrific to raise a family, and parks. And then we've got rural areas. Just in Walnut Creek itself, there are horse farms, for example. There's equestrian areas, and people can just do so many variety of things, whether it's hiking or walking around the Lafayette Reservoir. And the diversity of people are so much more than they ever were before. People of every ethnicity and race and everything. So that's really what I love about the county. I think it's unique. The weather is great. As I like to tell my friends that live in San Francisco, when it's summer in Contra Costa.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Councilmember Wilk.
Absolutely.
Is there any questions for me or anything about, yeah?
Well, let me ask what you like about living in Walnut Creek.
Ooh, I love how clean everything is. That's my favorite part about living in Walnut Creek. I go outside and like the air is like so fresh and like everything is nice and green. I love all the trees that we have. And like you said, we have the open space, which is awesome to hike in. So yeah, I love that aspect of Walnut Creek.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Arjun.
Awesome. Thank you.
My name is Renee Joseph, and I'm here with Councilmember Neil Arnerich, and I'm here with the CCTV series to interview him. So why don't we start with you telling me a little bit about yourself?
Well, I have been on the Danville Council for 28 years. I've served 7 terms as mayor and 7 terms as a council member, and that started in 1995. But I'm also an architect, so I run an architectural planning firm for the past 46 years.
Wow, that's really cool. what do you do in architect?
Well, actually, that's how I got involved in local government. I volunteered to be on an architectural design review board, if that makes sense,
Yes.
in Danville. I saw an advertisement, and from that I got involved volunteering and then got on the planning commission. So that was about making land use decisions and aesthetic decisions about new projects being built in Danville. And so it was kind of parallel of what I was passionate about and what I saw our local government. Danville was a town that was growing a lot back in 1995.
Nice. So when was the first time that you came? So the first time you came into office was in 1995?
Yes.
What surprised you most when you first came in?
Well, there was a long list. I sort of ran on the idea that, let me give you the backstory. The backstory, Danville was not doing very well financially.
Okay.
I was the chair of the planning commission, and I was seeing what I thought were some maybe desperate moves by the town staff in trying to prove things ahead of common sense and ahead of what might fit best for Danville. And I questioned that. And there was, FBI was investigating some financial things. A lot of things weren't going well. And I naively thought, well, I run a business, so maybe I can do this. I'll run it like a business. Well, once getting elected, that there is a little bit of government that can run like a business, but the rest of it, it has to be there 24/7. It has to be there to make sure the lights are turned on, the streets are clean, no matter what. And so it's different. In a business, you can scale up or shrink down or do all those things according to the local economics. Government can't do that easily. But I found that some of those things from the business side did help create some discipline.
Yeah.
And so it's been an interesting journey. Even after 28 years, I'm still learning things. But it's been an interesting process. And Danville now is one of the best financially run cities.
That is really
And not just because
impressive.
of me.
That's so impressive. Would that, well, on that note, what would you say the biggest concern of our county is now that?
Well, I think in our community, it's the state legislature has traditionally been a policymaking group. And to give you a contrast, in local government, as in the town of Danville, everything you touch and feel is created by local government. In fact, to get from here in Martinez to Danville, while you drive on a highway, it used to be maintained and run by the state of California through Caltrans.
Yeah.
It's not. We had to form our own transportation agency. So cities and counties really provide everything. But the state government is really trying to take over cities. So our biggest challenge to our communities, to our neighborhoods, is having policymakers try to tell us how to run day-to-day things. And they're doing it over one concept, that we're missing a gap on housing. And Danville's a community that's completely built out. And we built out every square inch, except for one parcel, and that now has a plan proposed. So we're at odds with the state of California and what they're trying to do, and we're trying to make lives better in our community and help people get to and from work, live in a safe place, make sure they can raise their kids and get a good education. Yeah,
that's a really good idea. How do you, for this matter, how do you differentiate what, like, your responsibilities with the county and then also with your district?
Well, I would say that we're fortunate in Danville. We are elected at large, so we're not in districts. Our county supervisors have district elections, and that's because it's appropriate. There's 1.2 million people in Contra Costa, 5 supervisors. So that makes a lot of sense to have that. So I represent in Danville, I represent everybody that's in our community. But I also, because even though we're independent from the county, we're in Contra Costa County, so work closely with the county, and particularly our local supervisor for our district, where Danville's at, is Candace Anderson. Yeah. It also helps, she was a former mayor of Danville. And so we have a symbiotic relationship in providing services. There are certain things the county does that cities and towns can't do, and vice versa. And I think we work really well together.
Yeah, that's great that's how you can keep two ideas. For my last question to wrap this up, could you tell us your favorite part about Contra Costa?
Wow, the list is long, but you know, there are a couple of national parks. There's one here in Martinez, and you know where the other one is? It's in Danville, California. It's Dow House. Eugene O'Neill was an American playwright, the only one to ever win a Nobel Prize. He lived in Danville for several years, wrote most of his great works. Danville is situated in a valley between Mount Diablo State Park and the Las Trampas. It's a beautiful place to be. It's got a lot of history. It was founded during the gold rush when it really started to grow up. It's really, this is a beautiful place. Danville is the single safest community in the state of California for 7 years in a row. So proud of that. It's a great place to live.
Yeah. Well, that will be all for our time today. I thank you so much.
Great. Renee, thank you. It was really a pleasure to meet with you today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Komal Ajala, and I'm a rising junior at Miramonte High School from Orinda, California. And today, I have the pleasure to talk to Supervisor Candace Anderson, who represents District 2, which happens to be my district as well. So, Supervisor Anderson, could you tell me a little bit about what you do for our district?
Absolutely. I have the privilege of serving on the Board of Supervisors. We have regular meetings. We meet almost every Tuesday for meetings that last anywhere from 4 to 8 to 12 hours on a really, really long day. And then I get to serve on 28 other boards and committees related to my position, most of which meet once or twice a month. But a good way that I love to describe what I do is our city councils. They do an amazing job handling within our cities, their parks, recreation, land use, transportation issues, police services, and I get to do that for unincorporated communities. So, for example, Alamo or parts of Walnut Creek are unincorporated, and so I get to kind of be the city council for them. But the county does a lot more. They provide a lot of services that the cities don't. Some of it is justice related, such as our district attorney, our public defender, the sheriff's department, and our jails, animal services. And then we also have all of the health and human services that cities typically don't provide. And so we're the safety net. And so that's everything from people who are homeless in need of shelter, people who may not have the food they need, who need what we used to call food stamps, we call CalFresh or SNAP programs, people who might have serious mental illnesses, who need behavioral health services. So we get to provide all of those services, and then we provide exciting things like environmental health that inspects restaurants to make sure that they're sanitary and clean when we go in there to eat. We have weights and measures that make sure that everything from your gas pump is properly calibrated to the cash register where you're checking out that the prices match. And so we provide a lot of services that cities don't, and we partner with our cities. And that's what I love, because we have amazing 19 cities in Contra Costa, and I get to work with them, particularly the cities in District 2, which I will just mention, include Orinda, where you live, and Lafayette and Moraga, part of Walnut Creek, and then Danville and San Ramon.
Right, and you mentioned so many fascinating points, and to my understanding, you've been on the Contra Costa Board of Supervisors since 2012. So you've watched our country and our district go through immense changes throughout the decade.
Absolutely.
Can you please tell me how it is comparing the issues in our district to that of the country, and how you pay attention to both?
Well, you need to, because a lot of the programs we have about a $5.5 billion budget. And well over half of that budget, closer to 2/3 of that budget, is us administering a lot of federal and state programs, a lot of the safety net programs that I mentioned. And so when you have a change in federal law, it's going to impact not just the county, but the very citizens that we serve. Now, the one thing that I love about my job is it is a nonpartisan office, which means you're not a Republican or a Democrat when you're sitting up on the dais. You are simply someone who is there trying to solve problems. And I often joke, you know, a pothole is not a Republican or a Democrat, it's just a pothole somebody needs to fill. And that is common to the majority of the issues we face. And so on the Board of Supervisors, we typically do not have partisan bickering. Sometimes someone might bring up someone's party affiliation, but we're there committed to just solving the problems of this community.
I really love that point you made about how it's not an us versus them problem. We're all just here working to resolve the same issues that tackle our country. So I actually wanted to go back to the point you made about federal law. To my understanding, you practiced as an attorney before you were in office. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I was fortunate to go to law school right after my undergraduate degree in public policy. I started out in Honolulu, which is where I grew up. I'm working in the Office of the Prosecuting Attorney, which is similar to our district attorney's office, in their appellate division. And so I used to write appellate briefs as to why a conviction should stand. And then if the Hawaii Supreme Court wanted to hear the oral argument, I used to get to go argue before the Hawaii Supreme Court. And I will tell you, it helped me develop really good writing skills. It also helped me learn to articulate my position in a way that was honing in on the details that are really important. It also taught me how to balance information and how to do research and really understand the ramifications of all of the laws that we pass as ordinances in our county. And after moving to what we call the mainland, to California, I did of course take the California bar exam as well, which then gave me a better insight into California law. But I think everyone should go to law school. It just gives you a great understanding of how our legal system works, and it also just prepares you for whatever you end up going into.
That's very inspiring to hear as a student who wants to pursue law. And I'm just wondering, what incentivized you to move to the mainland to work in the office?
Well, it's one of those things where my husband and I are both attorneys. We both were practicing in Hawaii, and Hawaii had a very small legal market. My husband, when he was 12, had moved from Hawaii to Alamo. And as we looked at raising our family, we have a large family, we actually have 6 children. And so when we decided where we were going to raise our family, it made a lot of sense to return to the mainland, where we had excellent public schools for them to attend, and where we would be able to both find whatever area of the law we wanted to practice in a much larger market.
That's so interesting. Now, did you have any jobs in the office before you were on the Contra Costa Board of Supervisors?
I did. I started out my public service back in 1991, and I was living in Morgan Hill, which is in southern Santa Clara County. My 4th child had just been born, and at that time I decided trying to balance a law practice, even part-time, with a large family wasn't making as much sense, and so I found myself appointed to 2 city commissions in Morgan Hill. And 2 years later, when my children at the time were 2, 4, 6, and 8 years old, there was a vacancy on the Morgan Hill City Council. I got appointed to that vacancy and began my public service. And right when my 2 years were up and it was time to pull papers to run for the City Council in Morgan Hill, my husband got a pretty amazing job offer that would bring him up to Walnut Creek to work. And so it was a balance which you make a lot in your life of mom's political career or a really fun community to raise our family. And so we chose to move up to Danville, and when we moved there, I just volunteered in the community because you don't have to be a mayor or a city council member to make a difference. And then just about 6, 7 years later, an opening came up on the Danville Town Council. Once again, filled out an application. I always say the least objectionable candidate, and I got appointed to Danville's Town Council in 2003, and then ran in 04 and 08, and got to be mayor of Danville twice. And I loved that experience. So just under 10 years on Danville's Town Council, which gave me a true appreciation for all of the issues cities face when working with the county. And there are a lot of issues that come up. We overlap in some areas, we work together in a lot of areas, but you really, as a county supervisor, when you have that city council experience, it really helps you figure out how you can partner with your cities to really help them reach their goals, and sometimes to navigate through a little bit of bureaucracy. We find ourselves in the county.
Right, and I love that point you touched on about how you don't have to be a mayor or a councilman to make a difference in your community, and that's what you've done, which is really inspirational. And I just want to ask, are there any challenges that you had to overcome while navigating from becoming an attorney to moving to California and taking up places in the office?
It's always, it requires a lot of organizational skill, especially when you have a large family, as I did, but I had just so much support. We are fortunate that we live in a community, the county of Contra Costa, where people care about one another. And I cannot tell you, even when I had busy meetings, I had to be at a city council meeting, my husband wasn't home from work, I needed a babysitter, I had so many other women who would just step up and say, let me take your kids for you. And I know you've got to get to this meeting. I had a supportive network that really inspired me to do what I was doing. And they were also a great sounding board on the issues that would come forward. And I always tell elected officials, you can surround yourself by other elected officials, but what's really most important is having a group of friends, of peers, we sometimes call them our kitchen cabinet, who will give you the real story of what's really happening, what they really feel as just the average citizen dealing with the issues that they have to confront, particularly with local government.
Yeah, definitely. And you've been around so many different areas, and now you're finally in District 2, which I'm so happy about. What are some differences or things you've taken away from other places you've worked at that you can apply here to District 2?
Well, I think it's really fiscal responsibility is something that I learned very early on in my career, because when I was on Morgan Hill City Council, the state was going through some real budget struggles similar to what we're a little bit facing right now. We sometimes call it a little bit of a fiscal cliff. And so in the Morgan Hill City Council, I saw us having to really cut back on services. And so when I ended up on Danville's Town Council, while we were collecting things like park fees, which you could use to build a park but not maintain it, I wanted to make sure that we had that balance in our budget so that we would, even on a rainy day, have money saved up so that we didn't have to reduce services. So you learn things like that. You learn very early on that people can pack a room with people yelling and screaming, but it's not necessarily the loudest voice in the room, it's the voice of reason. And you need to, as an elected official, before you even get into a hearing, listen to every position, read up, to be prepared so that it's not just the people who might have been able to get a lot of people to show up in the same colored shirt or stand up and make a lot of noise, but you're able to make what you think is the right decision for the entire community, not just those who came to the hearing. And oftentimes, particularly with land use issues or what you're going to do with a park or something, people will come who are opposed to it. Those who kind of like the idea, they're just going to stay home because they like the idea. They don't think they need to be there at the hearing. And so you really need to understand the issues and be prepared for anything that comes your way in a meeting.
Right. That's what life's all about, being prepared and just
absolutely.
It takes a team at the end of the day, right? It's not a one-man show, and that's what I feel like is really important about what you just touched on. So kind of adding on to that, how do you maintain responsibilities in our county while prioritizing District 2?
Well, luckily, while I have District 2 issues that come my way, every Tuesday when we meet at our Board of Supervisors meeting, we are addressing county-wide issues. And so the things that I get to vote on really are the things that are going to make a difference in every district. And I recognize that I represent one of the more affluent areas of Contra Costa County. There is no question. But one of my goals has always been from the start is to really address things such as how do we break cycles of poverty, where you might have a family that for maybe 2 or 3 generations has been living on the margin. What can we be doing for that child who might be born into poverty at an early age to give them a good education, job opportunities, so that they don't feel like they are going to be stuck in that same cycle. Similarly, there are issues with regard to mental health that know no socioeconomic boundary. all of us in each of our communities are facing crises where we might have individuals with a mental health or a substance abuse issue who cycle repeatedly through our homeless shelters and our jails. And so a lot of my work has been focused on how do we help those individuals which are going to be residing in each and every one of our districts. How do we set policies? How do we appropriate our budget to really help make a difference in the lives of those who are truly suffering? And we've got the resources. We've got an amazing county health system. We have clinics. How do we really work with those individuals, even in the jails, where no one wants to see mental health being treated in a jail? But if someone is going to be in jail for a little while because of their actions, because of their behavior, I want to offer them the most robust health services, mental health services we can, so we can stabilize them and then hopefully find supportive housing upon their release so that they won't be cycling back over and over again. So much of what I get to do, yes, I get to do with the land use issues and making sure things are happening appropriately in District 2, but I also get to really address, to me, these more important county issues that affect everyone.
I agree. It's about finding the root of that problem and just reaching out to help everyone. And that way we can build a better future for our youth and our society.
Absolutely.
And that's why I wanted to ask you, what do you see Contra Costa and our district in the future? Like, how do you see us paving the way for our youth?
I see us really, one thing that I'm very passionate about is our juvenile justice system. And as we went through a process really almost 10 years ago of analyzing the data, we have a significant overrepresentation of youth of color in our criminal justice system, and particularly in our juvenile justice system. And so working on the Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council and allocating funding toward our probation officer that oversees it, we have some really great opportunities to redefine how we help youth offenders. And so, of course, as I mentioned, we want to go back to the prenatal care of a mother, of someone when a child is born. We want to ensure that, particularly when you look at statistics where, for example, we have a much higher mortality rate for African American women, as well as for their children, which is just something that doesn't make sense in this era, that we would have that discrepancy. So more funding to help those mothers who might have a higher incidence of having challenges, making sure we have the right educational system, and then finding alternatives to incarceration. And so in Orinda, in Danville, in those areas, typically when a youth gets into trouble, they're not immediately sent to juvenile hall. We have diversion programs. We work with the families to help get that youth back on track. And so we're doing more prevention programs throughout the county now. And that is something that our probation office is saying. We want more prevention programs. We want more youth centers. And when someone gets in trouble, rather than incarcerating them, let's provide intensive services in their home, working with the whole family to help provide a more stable environment for that youth, to keep them in school, to keep them with their peers, and hopefully get them on a track that's a little bit more positive for their outcome. And so it's really coming up with innovative ways to really drill down on the data and say, we can make a difference if we start early enough in this child's life, in this teenager's life, to help get them on a better path.
I think that's so important what you said, that we can make a difference if we start early enough. Mm-hmm. If we look for alternatives to incarceration, then we can truly make an impact. And I want to ask, what could the youth of Contra Costa, and honestly any county, do to better the future of their society?
I think it's important that you be aware of every issue. I realize you're in school most of the time when we're at our Board of Supervisors meetings, but by all means, with your city councils that meet in the evenings, when you see an issue, a concern, a safety concern, a traffic concern, don't hesitate to go and talk to your mayor, to your city council members. I always tell people, we are elected to serve people. We are elected to answer the phone, to respond to your questions, and listen to you when you come before us at a city council meeting or even on a one-on-one meeting. So I would say, first of all, know what the issues are in your community, and when you see something on an agenda, don't hesitate to reach out even before the meeting. Don't just wait for that 3 minutes or 2 minutes of public comment, but see if you could set up a meeting with the mayor, with a city council member, with your county supervisor to talk about those issues. And particularly on our high school campuses, there's so much that we're trying to address as we come out of COVID, making sure, I know your school district has done a really good job with having wellness centers to really assist youth who might be feeling a little bit of a struggle, particularly going back into in-person classes. So don't hesitate to reach out to our mental health commission, to others saying we need more. This is what we need. And invite us to your youth councils, your forums, so we can hear what's on your mind and make sure that we are addressing those needs, because the voice of youth is very, very important. You need to be aware of the issues. We need to be aware of the issues that you feel you have.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you today. I'm so happy you joined me, and thank you.
Hi, my name is Carlina Meyer, and I am an incoming junior at Carondelet High School from Walnut Creek, California. Today, I'm here to interview Susanna Meyer, who is a city council member in Brentwood. She also has numerous other experiences, including a community volunteer, school advocate, and head of her own nonprofit called Empowered Aging, which helps senior issues. I'm so happy to interview today, Susanna. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Carlina. It's nice to meet you, and thanks for the invitation.
So my first question for you is, can you tell me a little bit about your experience, both in the corporate world and as a school advocate, and then to volunteer, and eventually to the Brentwood City Council, and what your journey was like?
It's an interesting journey, actually, because I would never in a million years have imagined that I would ever be a vice mayor or on city council at all. It wasn't something that was in my plan, or even something I never thought about until COVID hit. But the nonprofit part of my work, that's always been something that's been very near and dear to my heart. And being involved in my community and volunteering and being about like room mom and volunteering at the school since my kids were young, all of that, those are all things that have been part of who I've been and part of who I knew I was kind of from the beginning. The political part of it is new. The political part is something that's not, it's not a coat that fits me all the time, if you want to put it that way. I'm not a huge fan of politics, to be honest, because I really like straight talk, I like transparency, and I like communication, and I just want people to say who they are and where they are, and just be honest with each other. And so sometimes that can be a bit of a challenge for me, but getting involved in politics actually happened because I wanted to do more to serve my community, and I wanted to help people through COVID and help people get connected to resources, that kind of thing.
Could you talk a little bit about why you are particularly interested in issues relating to seniors?
You know, it's my grandmother was always a huge influence in my life and a huge inspiration for me. And I think I've always been someone who doesn't care what your age is. I can be friends with anyone, and I sort of gravitated to people who have life experiences because I just love sitting and talking with someone and hearing their story. And I think older adults have so much to share and so much to benefit the communities they live in if we just sit and listen to them, if we sit and talk and give them time to share who they are and what they've gone through. And I think, in fact, thinking about history, I always felt like social studies classes in high school should include residents of local long-term care facilities, bringing into the classroom and teaching about their real life experiences. I think there's so much separation between generations now that doesn't need to be there. And I think people are too focused on age, frankly, when they should just be focused on the person.
For sure. And you mentioned that politics wasn't necessarily your cup of tea to begin with, but you do work in politics now. What aspects of government and policy and politics are your core values, I guess?
I think the biggest thing about being involved in politics is being able to raise voices. And I think as individuals, we all have the right to speak up at a city council meeting or a county supervisors meeting or a Senate or assembly meeting, a hearing, and to make our thoughts and our opinions known and to advocate for ourselves. But when you're in elected office, you can help people who aren't necessarily comfortable in that role with raising their voices anyway. If someone reaches out to me and says, I really feel strongly about this situation in the city, but I'm not comfortable coming to speak at a meeting, I can potentially kind of advocate for them and help them understand that, that they have a right to speak and their voices do matter. And so that's, I guess, I think of things in those terms too, because of older adults, in fact, because there are a lot of people in our communities that don't feel like they have the right to be heard or the opportunity to be heard. And so that's been an important thing for me, is to try and help people that are normally overlooked, underregarded, underheard, to feel like they do matter and they can speak up and be heard. It's the same thing as on like I said, a county or a state level as well, that we do all have the right to be heard. And if those of us who are comfortable in that role of speaking up can do that on behalf of others who are not, I think it's our responsibility to do that.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really powerful, that you definitely stand for uplifting others' voices and advocating for those who are maybe a little bit more marginalized and can't stick up for themselves. So thank you. My next question is, when you took office, what surprised you most, whether that be about your actual day-to-day role or maybe just what it was like to be in a political setting?
Yeah, it is. It's definitely, I worked for the state Senate for 2.5 years, and in that role, I was watching council meetings in the district, the part of the district that I covered, on a regular basis. So I thought I had a clear understanding about what happens. And of course I did when it comes to what you're seeing in the front, on the dais and the interactions with the public there. But the truth is, when you get up there, it is a very different thing, and the demands are different, and the sacrifices that you're making are different. The interactions with the public that either maybe don't understand what it is that you stand for or are unclear about how much power you actually do have, those things are all different. I think we see a lot of local control, that's a catchphrase, being taken away at the city level when it comes to housing and development. And my goal to stand for the residents of the city that I held office in doesn't change, but my ability to sometimes make votes about the things that are important to them can be very highly impacted by the state. So I think part of it was getting to understand exactly where our control stops and the state takes over. That's a kind of a big deal, actually.
So you mentioned that you are a council member in Brentwood, but you've also worked at the broader state level under Senator Steve Glazier. So what is your biggest concern for Brentwood individually and then for the broader county?
So for Brentwood, I would say affordable housing is huge, and I'll get into the county part of that as well. But in Brentwood, our housing has been, at one point we were the fastest growing city. So our housing is there. There's a lot of housing. There isn't a lot of affordable housing, and that's been a problem. And I really support the idea of inclusionary affordable housing, so that not every person who needs affordable housing is stuck in one high-rise apartment building in one area of town. I think it's more important for people to feel like they're all included in the community and they all have an equal place in it. And so inclusionary, of course, is going to mean that you have no idea if your next door neighbor paid market value or a lower amount for the house that they're living in. And I think that's for the sake of lifting people up and making sure people are feeling valued. I much prefer that kind of affordable housing. But the other part for Brentwood is that 80% of our residents are traveling at least 45 minutes each way to get to the jobs that can help them pay their bills and support their families. And so the job situation, we need to get more high-paying jobs within the city limits or close by, so that we can take some of these people off the roads and they have more time with their families.
Okay. And then for the broader Contra Costa County, would you say the job distance and affordable housing are also your top priorities?
I would say they are, but I think homelessness prevention is something that we talk about, we touch on it, but we're so focused on homelessness specifically that I think the prevention part of it could use some more attention. And I think at a state level too, I mean, even in my day job, I'm seeing things that where if an older adult was in the hospital and is now sent home but can't afford in-home care, so they have to choose between paying their rent or their mortgage and the food and the in-home care, which is really expensive, that there are a lot of things that I think we are not considering when it comes to the causes of homelessness and the ways that we can prevent that. And I think so absolutely jobs and affordable housing, but also in the prevention arena.
Okay. I'd be curious to know, what are some of your ideas specifically for homeless prevention?
I think, we talk a lot about rent control, and I think depending on the city, that's a good thing. It's not always the best fit by city, depending on what their funding is like and what kind of programs they have available. But I would love to see financial guidance and planning taught to a better degree in high school and in college, for that matter. I think some programs for seniors that maybe change the tax credits, because for senior on the senior end of things, we've got people living 30 years longer than their life expectancy was, 30 years ago. And so people weren't necessarily planning the way they are now. And so you have people running out of money, and then what happens? And then you have people that their rents are raised. So I know of a community of older adults in a lower income apartment complex where the rents were being raised incrementally, legally, but by the time all these raises were happening, we had people ending up becoming homeless because they just couldn't afford it. They had limited income and they had impacted income that was restricted. So I think it's just a lot of looking at things individually. I think I'd like to see cities having a little bit more control when it comes to housing development and the affordability percentages that we can all implement. I think if we're talking about some of the housing that happens really close to transportation, that's great. I mean, a lot of people that want to live in a high-rise apartment that is close to BART, that's great. But for the cities that don't have the same infrastructure and transportation, for example, it doesn't make sense to force that high-rise when there isn't the transportation, because you're taking away parking, and families need parking if they're going to have cars to take them to jobs or take their kids to school. So in large part, so much of this to me feels like you need to let cities figure it out, like let them decide what works most for their residents, because not everybody in Contra Costa County has the same issues as Brentwood does. There's Walnut Creek is completely different, and Danville and Concord, they're all different. And I think we really need to be allowed to make some of these choices based on what we know are the needs of our cities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so true, that homelessness especially isn't a blanket issue because there's so many different needs. But I do really want to highlight what you said about the financial literacy, or lack thereof, of financial literacy education. I believe that's also really important. And building off of that, what other things would you want to see for youth to prepare for adulthood?
I think there isn't enough attention being given to trade opportunities. And I think it's wonderful to encourage our kids to go to four-year universities. I think for so many, that's a path that's going to get them into a career that's going to sustain them throughout their lives and bring them all this fulfillment. It's wonderful. But there are a lot of kids who take different paths. And I think we need to lift those up as being really great alternatives, not as like a secondary, well, if you can't succeed, go do this instead. Make sure that people understand that there are alternate paths that are just as fulfilling and can still give someone a lifestyle that really supports their hobbies and their family members and travel and all those great things. And they should feel pride in that. I think that the institutions, like I said, are great for those people that have that ability to succeed to that degree. But there are a lot of people facing a lot of challenges that mean going to a university is just not going to be the right fit. We just really need to focus on some alternatives so people feel pride in those as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your perspective on that. Switching gears a little bit, I did want to ask you, how do you balance your government work with your nonprofit work, and what does a day in your roles, both those roles, look like?
It's kind of interesting. It's sometimes it's I'm not going to lie, it's very hard to find a balance. To have time to myself and my family can be a huge challenge, because I have a council meeting tomorrow, and this weekend I had a 500-page agenda to read, which I got on Thursday evening. And of course, you're supposed to be ready with it, with your questions and comments and all of the research that you have to do, and the questions that you pose to staff and everything you have to get ready for the meeting, which means that the weekends, when there's some of them go over 1,000 pages. So the weekends before a council meeting, there isn't a lot you can plan for your weekend. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, my nonprofit work is very demanding. It's nonprofit work, which is always demanding. And so the weekends need to be for rest. So you have to really think about not just the balance, but what you're willing to sacrifice. There are regularly meetings, events, council meetings additional committee meetings that I have to go to as a council member, as a vice mayor, that take away from some of that time as well. So my day, I mean, I get up at 6 in the morning and then get in front of my laptop at 6:30 and start working on council emails to return them to residents who write to me, staff with questions, and then I move over to my work email and address those concerns, and then get ready, then go into work. And then it's it's definitely a balancing act, and it can be a real challenge. And I sometimes it can be disheartening if the change you're trying to impact isn't workable, or if people are, before I say this, I should preface it by saying, again, everyone has the right to speak up. Everyone should be feeling empowered to make public comments. But it can be hard to sit on the dais and be professional when someone is saying something that you know is not accurate. And we can't, as a Brown Act violation, it would be a Brown Act violation to speak back and to engage in conversation during public comment. We're not allowed to do that. Mm-hmm. So there are times when people say things to us that we really wish we could educate them. And sometimes it's anonymous, or they just give their first name, so you can't connect at another time. It can be very disheartening. And nonprofit work can as well. So I think one of the challenges for me is to try and find those really good, powerful moments where I feel like I'm impacting things in a positive way. And that's for council or nonprofit work, because the work I'm doing during the day, that our staff are seeing really challenging, sometimes cases of abuse and neglect, which that can be heartbreaking. And then for city council as well, you just have to find the moments that are motivating and figure out if you've got this line you don't want to cross when it comes to what you're willing to sacrifice and how much time you're willing to give, because it is a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for your time and dedication. Even though I don't live in Brentwood, I think your constituents really appreciate your passion and your determination to serve them. So thank you for that.
I appreciate you, and I wish you all the best. And if you decide you want to get into politics, then I hope you'll do a great job with it. I'm sure you will if you're interested this early, because I certainly had no clue at that age.
Mm-hmm. Okay, my final question for you is, what is your favorite part about Contra Costa County?
I think probably the distance to everything. You've got, your San Francisco and your Monterey and your beaches and the mountains and the wineries. And I think you're kind of in the middle of everything. And I have to say, I love the culture that's coming into our county and into our cities for that matter as well. But we're bringing in, we're attracting people from a lot of different backgrounds and ages and religions and all these different diversities that is what makes us great. It makes us one of the best counties that, in the Bay Area, if not the best. I can say that, right? Mm-hmm. Just because I think that we're so much richer when we bring everyone and their experiences to the table together. So distance to all the really great things we can all do, and then the diversity that we're bringing, I think it's just great.
I agree. Contra Costa is definitely a very unique place to live in, and it's very special.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and for agreeing to do this interview.
All right. Thanks so much, Carlina. Take care and good luck to you.
Thank you. You too.
Welcome. My name is Charlie Walters. I am a recently graduated senior at Northgate High School, and I will be attending George Washington University next year. Today, I have the opportunity to speak with Board of Supervisor member Ken Carlson. He represents District 4, which happens to be my district. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, and congratulations on George Washington.
Appreciate it.
For you.
Thank you. So my first question for you is, what do you see as the role of the Board of Supervisors?
Really, it's being in charge of the county.
Mm-hmm.
All the services the county provide, all the infrastructure that we're responsible for. It's making those hard decisions about how the county is going to operate going forward, and we're planning for our future.
Mm-hmm. So you are the first openly gay member of the County Board of Supervisors. What does this mean to you, and what are you trying to promote for future generations?
It really is all about diversity, equity, inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
I was very afraid for a long time to get out there and involved and be open about who and what I am. And that took a little bit to get over. Now it feels like there's quite a burden to shoulder, because you want to set the example. The work I'm doing, I stand on the shoulders of so many that did activism and hard work before me. And so, one, I want to carry that on. But truly, it's not about just LGBTQIA, it's about everybody. And everybody having a voice, everybody being included in everything we do, and in the world in general. So.
Yeah, so staying on that similar topic, across the country we see LGBTQ students particularly coming under attack. What are you and the board doing to protect our gay and trans students, both in schools and then in our community?
We're continuing to find partnerships and to support our programs. We're creating the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice, where whether it's within the county structure itself or out in the broader world, our community benefit organizations, everybody has an eye on equity, inclusion, social justice. Everybody has an equal voice. Everybody has a chance to participate fully. And that's really it. It's just getting the message out and clearly standing our ground and saying that unacceptable behavior, discrimination, marginalization is not acceptable. Absolutely. And that's the platform we will continue to work. It's broader than even the LGBTQIA.
Yes, absolutely. I love to hear that. So pivoting a little bit, Contra Costa County is a county with broad socioeconomic levels. You see much more affluent communities and then less affluent communities all across the county. When you are crafting policies on the Board of Supervisors, how do you take into perspective and make sure you craft policies that benefit all members of the county and not just one specific economic level?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's something you have to find in the work you do in politics in general, is how can you do the best with the least amount of harm, right?
Yeah.
How can you accomplish the goals that the entire county thrives? And that's just, it really is the core of the work you do. You've got to think about and uplift those. Many are able to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Those more affluent communities, they're taking care of themselves, they're supporting themselves. Now, there might be constituents or community members who aren't. So all the work we do just has to be uplifting and supportive. Are you doing harm by picking one community or one geographic area or one population over another? You got to find that balance.
Absolutely. One area where I've seen this kind of difference play out is in our schools. So I went to Northgate High School, which is in Mount Diablo Unified School District. And in my district alone, when visiting other schools and talking with friends, I've seen how different schools, maybe in more affluent areas, have more opportunities than the other schools when it comes to classes, extracurriculars, things like that. How can the board make sure that every student has the best opportunity to advance, to go to college, go to trade school, and set themselves up for success?
Well, the unfortunate part is that the Board of Supervisors doesn't have a direct impact on the education system. But on those supporting organizations, all the support we can provide. So when we look at economic development, bringing industry that brings apprentice programs, trade programs, other pathways to educational opportunities, those things need to be there. So when we're doing, let's say, we're trying to provide housing security, we want to prevent homelessness. So can we create and partner to create educational pathways, supportive programming to get people other opportunities that might not be a college path.
Yes.
It might be a trade school. It might be an apprentice program. Those types of things. So we're always looking for those opportunities. So, when we're doing healthcare, when we're doing housing, when we are doing economic development, how does that all play in? How can we provide opportunities going forward for our youth?
Absolutely. I think there's such a kind of stigma, especially around here, about once you're done with high school, college is the next step. So I think it's really great how you guys are promoting trades, apprenticeships, and other things like that. Yeah. So moving on to your experience before you came to the Board of Supervisors, you were a member of the Concord Police Force for over 27 years. What made you switch from being in police on the police force to serving in the city government?
Well, it started for me as a very young toddler. My grandfather was a county supervisor here in Contra Costa County, so I've been kind of on the campaign trail, as part of his campaign. as a small child. So I was always intrigued. You know how our family connections. So it's,
Absolutely.
you know, hey, what Grandpa does is really kind of exciting. I want to be a part of that. And then I chose a path of public service because that's the example I was seeing. My mom was a hospice nurse, so taking care of people in the final days of their life, it was always kind of public service oriented for me. Law enforcement just kind of fell into my lap in the sense of that would be my best way to serve. Within that, being a city employee, it's very important to be politically engaged. As an employee, you want to have the right decision makers supporting you. So I got active in politics through my labor group. And then, you know, being engaged, I actually worked for Concord when they brought Access TV online. So I was the guy behind in the control room,
super cool.
watching every city council meeting, broadcasting it out to the community. And that I got to watch the workings of what was going on. I was employed there watching the workings going on. This was just my natural path. This is where I wanted to land. So when Pleasant Hill, which is my hometown, there was an opportunity to run for city council. I had the right support, the right timing, and it got me to make the move.
Yes.
And this was just for me the next logical step. I've always wanted to be engaged in this community. I am born and raised here. I've spent 90% of my life in Contra Costa County, and so it was going to be, I'm going to continue to serve the community I love so much.
Yeah, I really love what you said about community engagement there and how we need to be politically engaged. So now you are on the County Board of Supervisors. While it is a popular and important position in our county here, it might not get the recognition it necessarily deserves or needs. What approach would you take to better inform the public on the duties and kind of the role of the community of the County Board of Supervisors? And what steps would you take in just overall getting your message out there?
Well, you're a big help right here.
Appreciate it.
This is an opportunity to share that, because quite often I'm asked, what does a supervisor do? And it is. There's a lot going on in the county that impacts each and every one of us. If you've driven on our road, if you own property in this county, you know, everywhere you go and everything you do, the county has some touch on that. And therefore, you need to understand what we do, we need to share what we do, and you need to engage in with what we do, because we impact everyone's life in Contra Costa County. We have a healthcare system, you know, there's law enforcement, our criminal justice system, our social service support networks. It just goes on and on and on. And then there's the responsibility of the infrastructure, the roadways, the flood control. We've seen weather changes like crazy in the last years.
Yes.
So we have an impact on the quality of life of every Contra Costan, and they need to understand that, and they need to engage, and that's one thing I'm really, really proud of. I have a great team that works with me and supports me, and they get a little frustrated because I'm the guy that never says no. So if you have something you want to share, you want to meet, you want to talk, unfortunately, I'm wide open to that. And so I want to hear that community input, and I want to have that engagement. And so that's me getting out there and really engaging the constituents.
I love to hear that, because local government is so important. It really controls so many aspects of our lives. So a few final points. What would you say is the biggest concern facing our county moving forward?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, big one.
There is. There's so much. I mean, we talk about housing and homelessness. And it's, you know, when we talk about housing and homelessness, there's so many factors that go into that. So you can't just say we're going to stop homelessness and we're going to build housing and homelessness ends. No, there's issues with mental health. There's issues with economic, diversity and or access. So the quality of life, and those that are experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity or food insecurity, there are so many factors that go in that. Part of that is education. Part of that is economic opportunity, access to health care. So it's really a broad umbrella to address, but the priority is yes, we need to address homelessness. We need to prevent homelessness. And I think we're on a successful path, but it's having that broader view that if we can address social and economic disparities, we can close the gap.
Absolutely, I'd love to see that. So last one, how do you maintain your county responsibilities while also prioritizing your district and the members specifically in your district?
Yeah, that's hard, because I do represent a district within the county. And I do want to prioritize and support them, but again, you have to have the broad view.
Yes.
What is in the best interest of the community? Every community, every city within our districts, within the county are a little bit different and have different needs. And so let's just say that I want to do the best for the whole county, but I also want to protect. So there's no easy answer. You asked me a hard question, I'm just going to say, because Concord has needs or Central County has needs. I want to address those, but I don't want to do it to the exclusion of another community that's facing challenges as well. So it's really having that collaborative, collegial body, the board, that works together to do the broader good, not specific to any one district.
Okay, and one last thing. If you had a message for a young 18-year-old who wants to be involved in politics and cares about local government, what advice would you give them?
Get engaged, make those phone calls, register to vote, actively vote. Talk to your elected leaders. There's nothing they want to do more than to reach out and share the word and drive interest and drive, the support for building a better world that we live in. So it really is engage. And if you don't know where to go, make those calls, reach out to people, reach out to your local leaders, reach out to your city council members, your mayors, your supervisor, your school boards. All of them are really eager to uplift our youth and get them engaged.
Appreciate it. Well, I would like to say thank you to Supervisor Ken Carlson for this opportunity. I would love to speak again.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Armand Raza, and I'm a rising senior in Orinda. Today I'm interviewing Lynn Mackey, the Contra Costa County School Superintendent. So tell me, for both me and viewers at home, what is it like being the Contra Costa Superintendent, and what is your day-to-day job like?
So my day-to-day job, I was elected in 2019, and I've been serving as the superintendent since there. I run the County Office of Education, which is an agency that both does oversight and support for our 18 school districts in Contra Costa County, as well as the charter schools that are in Contra Costa County. We do our day-to-day, like right now is budget season, so all the school districts are turning in their budgets that their school board approved, and then we will go through it and make sure it is all in compliance and either approve it or work with them. And then we will also look at their school plans, their LCAP plans, to make sure that they are in compliance, and then we also provide support such as professional development for teachers and administrators, and then we also run our own schools as a County Office of Education. So we run schools in juvenile hall, the county jails. We do some CTE, career technical education, and ROP in the school districts, as well as a school for students who might be expelled or just need an alternative placement from their school district.
So speaking on budgets, you said that you kind of oversee the budgets for different districts. Seeing that schools are kind of known in the news for having problems with budgets and budget cuts, do we have that problem in the Contra Costa County? And if we do, how do you deal with those hard decisions?
So it really depends. Countywide, we're all okay. All of our budgets right now, except for one, are in a positive certification. And that's what we want. When we submit it to the state, you want to be in a positive certification. As you know, we have a very diverse, economically diverse county. So we have schools that you would think are very affluent. However, they don't get all the auxiliary or all the supplemental dollars that a school that might not be so affluent gets. And so you have schools like even in Orinda, which ends up being one of the lowest funded school districts in our county because they don't have a really high number of students who have special issues, right, that need supplemental funding. So what we do is we work with the school districts. They'll turn in a budget and then we'll go through it. We have one district right now that we're working really closely with. They're a larger district in our county, and they are really grappling with some budget issues, and it's because they have declining enrollment. That is happening throughout most of our county right now, which is declining enrollment. And the way we are funded as in our state is it's based on attendance. So you have to have students attending in order to get those dollars. So when you lose students, or they start becoming homeschooled, or they enroll in private school, you lose money, even though you need the same supports and access that you did with more students. So, yeah.
So you mentioned that you started this in 2019.
Yeah.
Obviously, COVID was a big impact on education. What did you see as problems arise during COVID, and how has that changed the education landscape since we started?
Well, of course, the biggest thing was just that we shut down, right? We shut down to keep people safe, to keep our hospitals, safe, to keep all our students safe. We did shut down, and that caused quite a bit of havoc for students. So some students had the access and opportunity to be able to do really well from staying at home, being virtual. They might have had people in their household to be able to support them. And then some households didn't. You had two parents that really needed to work from home. You had students that were just, didn't have as much adult support. So you really did see a disparity in that area. And then you had students that were losing family members, that really, really tragic things were happening. And then we had students that weren't really affected at all by it. So we saw that, reading supports, the kind of early education was a challenge, because you as an older student may have been able to access the technology better than the little ones coming up, right? So the ones that are learning their early literacy probably, to me, was the biggest struggle and the hardest. So now, fast forward, we're all back in session. We spent, since we've been back, a lot of resources. All the school district got resources to try to do interventions and provide opportunities for students that were falling behind. A lot of tutoring resources, a lot of just additional support. And now those funds are going away. Those funds are starting to roll off, even though I think as a society and as a county, we know that all those services are still needed in our county for those students. So that is a struggle, is where are we going to make the cuts that are going to need to be made, because the dollars related to COVID we're losing those. And how are we going to continue the supports and services that these most at-risk students really need in order to succeed?
So quickly on that, seeing that, of course, we've reopened our schools, do you think that the education system has adapted to that, or do you think that we're still recovering, or has it grown and become better since COVID shut down?
Well, I think, there's some school districts that really put in place some really good virtual schools that are continuing, right? That are still thriving. So a lot of families really found that they preferred more flexibility, and they're doing more of an online situation. Now, one way that we haven't fully recovered, we still have a number of families just doing straight homeschool, that they've opted out of the public school system, and we had an increase of people going into private schools at the time when the public schools weren't open. So I do think we're still in the process. I mean, we aren't that far out of it. We are still in the process of adapting and taking all the positive that we did learn about how to really meet the needs of students, like with multiple, just in multiple ways. And I think we're taking what we learned and trying to apply it, and then trying to really heal and support the students that still have a lot of kind of baggage from the pandemic, a lot of effects from the from the pandemic.
Yeah. So you've spoken before about kind of your unique experience with education and your GED, and that's how you kind of got into that. So how do you think your kind of unique experience and kind of unconventional experience with education has affected your kind of values as a county superintendent?
Oh, that's a great question. When I started at the county office, so I not only was I a student at the county office back in 1979 in one of those schools for expelled students, I also, my first teaching job out of college was at the County Office of Education. And what I realized was I had never had a good school experience. From the time I was small until I dropped out in middle school, I'd never had a good school experience. And so I really came with it at this lens of we have to fix it, we have to fix it, we have to fix it. I don't want any child to kind of have this experience I had. And then as I got into school administration, and especially now that I'm a county superintendent, I get to go around to these school districts and see amazing teaching and learning. That not everybody is having the school experience that I had, right? That the majority of people are having a really good school experience. In our county, we have a higher rate of graduation than the state does. We have really good stats overall as a county. Now, when you go, like I said, we're very diverse, so some schools and some classrooms are not having that experience. But I really did come into this role thinking, I want to make sure that nobody has the experience that I had and that my friends had. We were kind of, we were more of the alternative ed type of students, and we were not, I don't think we were giving all the opportunities and all the respect and encouragement that students who fit into a traditional educational system were given.
So now that obviously things have changed over all these years, do you think that these systems that you used to go through for those that are expelled and those that don't have conventional education, how do you think that they've changed and evolved over time?
Well, to some of it hasn't. I remember being very surprised coming back and saying, wow, nothing's changed. I actually became the principal of the school that I was in when I was out of the district, right, when I was needed to find an alternative placement. And things had not changed. They really haven't. And we have worked really hard at the county office to hire teachers that really have a caring spirit for students that might not fit into traditional education, and to really help students meet them where they are. Not everybody wants a traditional pathway. Now, some do, so we really want to give them the opportunity. If you want to go back to your district of residence and be successful and get back into a traditional pathway, we want to totally support them. But if you don't, then we will try to work with you to find however it works, whatever your pathway is, so that you can become a successful, productive community member. That's what we want to try to do. I really encourage people to go to community college. That was my saving grace, was going to community college before going to college. And it was just an amazing experience. Or into trade schools. Or if you want to do that 4-year experience, we want to work with students so that they can have that just some mistakes that they may have made in their high school years doesn't set them back.
That's amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously you've been on all sides of the education sphere, from educated to educator to now superintendent. What do you think now are your biggest concerns with the Contra Costa district for schools?
So Contra Costa as a whole, I really do try to focus on, for the districts, just where they need support, give them support, try not to interfere, because it's really local control. All of our 18 school districts have their own school board, and they all have, and we have 18 amazing superintendents across our county. So where I need to do my oversight, I do my oversight. Where they need support, I try to find out from them where they need support. But for my own programs that I run, I really do try to focus on our programs for homeless students, programs for foster youth, programs for incarcerated students, really those students that are more marginalized and may have not had the access and the opportunities. And I really do think that is an area that we should focus on, and we do. Our county, as we like to say at the County Office of Education, really does prioritize doing good work in our juvenile justice systems, or our legal system, I should say, and really supporting students, foster students, and students who are homeless. And we really make that a priority at the County Office of Education. Now, countywide, the issues that schools are facing right now are staffing issues. Like there's a definite staffing shortage. We had schools that couldn't find substitute teachers this year. I'm trying to encourage everybody to, if you have a BA, become a substitute teacher. It is really good work. The more subs we have, the better the work is, because you don't have as much overcrowded classrooms. But we have staffing shortages across the county. Funding continues to be an issue across the county. Like I said, some money is being pulled back, and we did get a bit of an increase, but it doesn't match the increase of the services schools are expected now to provide, right? Schools now are expected to provide mental health services, feed everybody, really all these kind of community services, have access to medical and emotional supports on campus, but we aren't necessarily funded to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think every school thinks that's a great model, to have everything available to students all the time. But we aren't funded to do that. And if we want to have really high quality schools that does that type of work, we need funding from the state in order to be able to do that work.
No, I definitely know the impact of substitutes. I had a substitute teacher take over my English class, and he was amazing.
Oh, good.
Shout out Mr. Modelewski.
Excellent.
Speaking on mental health, you talked about how kind of a lot of schools are expected to deal with that burden, even though it's not always they're not always able to. Now that mental health has become a more prominent issue for younger generations, how do you feel that that's kind of bled into the education side of their lives, and how do you guys plan to deal with those?
So I think when we talk about the whole child, right? So we no longer think of students as coming here to schools and just getting their academics, right? We really do think about how are we serving the whole child. And so in our county, we partnered with our behavioral health, our county behavioral health, which is an amazing department with Contra Costa County, and we got a fairly substantial grant to provide services throughout the 18 school districts, to train teachers, to train staff on some what we call tier 1, kind of the basic level of understanding around mental health issues, how to support students just kind of on a human level, right?
Definitely,
There's things you can just do on a human level that will really alleviate anxiety and stress with students, and then it won't compound to become a true mental health issue, right? So we are doing training in schools around just basic understanding and suicide prevention, and how can we support, and then we've also helped some of the districts get grants to get more counselors on site. And so I know that across the county there are more counselors on school sites now than there were prior to the pandemic, in order to support students. And it really is, I really do think it's more, it shouldn't just be on the schools, it really is societal. Like, what can we do to alleviate the stressors for parents in order to support children at home? And if children are getting everything they need at home, they'll have a better chance of focusing and getting what they need at school. And it really does, it's that old adage, it takes a village. It really does take a village to educate a child. It shouldn't just be either the parents or the students or the teachers. It really takes everybody.
Yeah, at my own school we have a wellness center that was recently opened, and I know many friends that are able to go there and feel safe.
Yeah, I know that Akalani's was really on the cutting edge. They were doing wellness centers before other people were doing wellness centers, the school district, and they are a model that we even look to try to get professional development from, because they're doing such a good job with it.
So one last question on a brighter side of things.
Yeah.
What do you think is the favorite part of your job that you kind of look forward to?
You know what, the favorite thing I do, so we run the County Teacher of the Year program for the 18 school districts. And so I get to go in to see each Teacher of the Year that has been nominated from their school district, and I see amazing teaching and learning by going in there. It is so fun, and like this year there were some TKers, so I got to go in and be with the little 4-year-olds and these amazing teachers, and that is definitely the most fun. And then just doing the really good work, and I was a principal in juvenile hall, and now I get to go back and see the good work that we're doing in our own schools.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you so much.